I appear today to voice our unequivocal opposition to the so-called SAVE Act. This anti-voter bill would make it significantly harder for millions of Americans, especially Latinos, immigrants, Black Americans, and women to exercise their right to vote. It's a dangerous step backwards for voting rights, and that would force every voter to show proof of citizenship, like passport or birth certificate, every time they register to vote. Most Americans simply do not carry these documents in daily life. In fact, more than 21 million eligible voters don't have documents that prove their citizenship readily available. From working fathers in Texas to abuelitas in California, many Latinos and Americans of all backgrounds would struggle to find and present paperwork that the federal government has never before required. The results? Millions of citizens would be disenfranchised, kept from making their voices heard by an unnecessary bureaucratic barrier. I want to highlight 3 burdens the SAVE Act would impose. These new requirements would hit Latino, immigrant, and working voters the hardest, and they would direct obstacles that our grandparents thought that they had overcome decades ago. First, the SAVE Act would flip the burden of proof onto every voter to prove their citizenship. It doesn't matter if you're white, Black, Asian, or Latino, you would now have to prove your citizenship with paperwork each time you register. This might sound simple, but for many, it's an almost insurmountable challenge. The economic burden of securing documentation falls hardest on people of color, particularly those from poor communities. For an hourly wage worker who can't easily take time off, the requirements to appear in person with documents is another heavy blow. In short, the documentation rule is a bureaucratic barrier that will keep our community and many others from the ballot box. Perhaps even more alarming is that the SAVE Act would force officials to retroactively purge voter rolls of anyone flagged as a non-citizen. This raises the very real possibility of American citizens, especially naturalized immigrants, being kicked off the voter rolls by mistake. This would create chaos and mistrust, hitting communities like ours the hardest. This is not safeguarding eligibility. It is weaponizing paperwork to disenfranchise citizens. The bottom line message of the SAVE Act to immigrant and Latino communities is clear: show me your papers. That message will scare people away from civic engagement, and I fear that is by design. This is perhaps the most insidious effect, a deep cultural discouragement of voting. The bill would even shut down voter registration drives. No more church groups, no more LULAC abuelitas in bingo halls, or community volunteers helping neighbors get registered to vote. Taking all of this away would destroy a grassroots tradition that has empowered Latino and working class voters for generations. Let me be clear. The SAVE Act is solving a problem that simply does not exist. Non-citizen voting is already illegal in this country, and it is virtually non-existent. You're more likely to be struck by lightning. That's why we call it la gran mentira, the big lie. As a Latino leader, I see clearly that this bill trades on fear of a fully inclusive, multiracial, and multi-ethnic democracy, echoing the country's ugly past of voter suppression. To conclude, the bill would undermine the right to vote, which is the crown jewel of our democracy. As a proud Latino, husband, father, and son of immigrants, I take this personally. Voting is not just a civic duty for our community, it is a hard-won right that tells us that we belong. LULAC was founded 96 years ago by Latino veterans and community leaders who knew that without the right to vote, we have no true say in our destiny. They fought to tear down barriers, from poll taxes to English-only ballots, that kept our gente out of the voting booth. The SAVE Act threatens to erect new barriers in the 21st century aimed squarely at the same communities who have struggled so long for an equal vote. I urge you in the strongest terms, do not let this happen.